So one of the muscles that good leaders develop is, believe it or not, empathy. So what does empathy look and sound like in a corporate environment? It doesn't mean walking around crying. It's not what it means. It means being able to see another person as a human being, not just as a cog in a machine. So, for example, here's a fairly common scenario in a business. A manager walks into somebody's office and says, "You've missed your numbers this quarter. We've had this conversation three times before, and if you don't hit your numbers the next quarter, I don't know what's going to happen." Right? That's a fairly normal scenario. If you inject empathy into that scenario, it goes a little differently. The manager walks into the office or calls them up and says, "You've missed your numbers for the third time in a row. We've had this conversation before. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. What's going on?" That's a muscle that has to be developed, where that person feels that someone has their back, that someone cares for them. And that pays back in spades over the course of time. And people will give their blood, sweat, and tears to serve and give back and follow a leader who they believe sees them as a human being and cares about their well-being as a human being, not just if they're hitting their numbers. Good leaders are students of leadership, and they're fascinated by the subject. They read books, they watch talks, they're constantly talking about the subject. And companies do have a responsibility, I believe, to offer some of that training. Good leadership training includes skills like, and I mentioned some of these before, how to resolve conflict, how to have an effective confrontation. What happens if something goes wrong or somebody did something badly? Like, how do you tell them in a way that they'll hear that information rather than just be defensive? How to have an effective confrontation, how to have a difficult conversation, how to listen, active listening, where you listen for meaning rather than listening for words. These are learnable, teachable skills. And yes, whatever training department or HR facility you have should provide that training as you make your way through the formal rank structure, so that you are equipped for the new job you have, just like we would if you were in a technical job. So yeah, that's part of it. But also people who, like I said, who aspire to be leaders, they do their own studying. One of the things that I've seen very successful in many companies, and it's very inexpensive, in fact, it's very close to free, is a book club, where somebody says, "I want to be a better leader." They choose to read a particular book, and people volunteer and they read 2 or 3 chapters a week and get together at lunchtime or whatever on Friday after work, and they talk about the chapters, and they just have a book club. And slowly but surely that book club grows. And then finally somebody says, "You know what, this was such a good book. I bet I could teach a class to other people about the subject of this book." And before you know it, you have a homegrown leadership training program. I've seen that work very, very, very successfully, and it's very, very simple to implement a book club.